This is a 2022 Chevrolet Colorado Z71 Midnight Edition, and it's a really great truck that could use just a little more love from Chevy. I know, I've done so much content on electric cars as of late, but electric cars aren't the only thing that really get me excited and interested. And actually, this is a new truck that my grandparents just got. My grandpa absolutely loves it. And in fact, we'll actually be making a video with him on the Gadgets channel at some point. So subscribe to the Random Alpha Gadgets if you haven't done that already. You've done that already, have you? But that's not what this video is about. We're actually just going to focus on the truck itself, which is, let's just say it's great. And there's so many things that I love about it, and even compared to the full-size truck market, because if you didn't know this, the Colorado is actually way smaller than the Silverado, and in my opinion, that's a good thing. I'm genuinely annoyed with how big trucks have been getting, and literally, I've been paying to every single redesign that they've been doing. Redesign after redesign with the Silverado and the Sierra, and basically any other full-size truck, they all just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where they are so big, I hate maneuvering those. Having a smaller mid-sized truck is a really nice change, and I'm going to take you on a tour of this Chevy Colorado and explain to you why it's so great, except for the fact that it still needs some work. So we're going to start off with this review with what's under the hood here. Now, there's a couple engine options for the Colorado. There's a total of 3 different options. There's a 4-cylinder and a V6 that are both gas powered, and then they also offer a turbo diesel 4-cylinder, I think. I don't exactly remember the exact specifications on that. I only looked up the specifications for what we got right under here. And what we have right here is a 3.6 liter V6. It's their tried and true V6 that you find in a lot of their V6 vehicles. You'll find it quite often in the Chevy Traverse, Buick Enclave, GMC Acadia, quite a few Cadillacs. It's a very common powertrain that GM likes to use. 3.6 liter V6, and this example produces 308 horsepower and 275 pound-feet of torque. Now, if you're a truck kind of guy, you might be thinking, those numbers are kind of small, especially when GM offers bigger trucks with bigger engines that produce much bigger power, like the 6.2 liter V8. That thing actually produces numbers that are in the 400s for both horsepower and torque. Not this guy. So you might be thinking, those numbers, those are kind of small. Except that it's not that small for a truck this size. Remember, this is a smaller truck, and because it's a smaller truck, it's a smaller vehicle, meaning you don't need as much power to move the dang thing. So yeah, smaller engine compared to what you get in the big full-size trucks that might not sound as manly per se or whatever. But you know what? It's fine. It really is fine. And in many cases, actually, that's more than enough for a vehicle this size. And on to the rest of the vehicle here. Now, this is where I have a lot of complaints with Chevy in general, and this is why, despite that, I'm saving up for a Tesla and such. If I had to buy a gas car that's not an electric car, I would totally buy from the GM group, and it's because they've pretty much made the only vehicles that really impress me and that I actually want to buy and can afford. Except I will never buy something with a Chevy bow tie on it. I would buy from Buick, GMC, or Cadillac, never Chevy. Why? It's because they are the worst cost cutters ever. For example, look at this. Halogen bulbs in 2022? And this is why the theme of this video is this product actually needs a lot more love. At this point, GM has shifted most of their products to using LEDs at this point because LEDs have been coming down in cost a lot. Well, except for this thing still has a lot of front headlights that actually are still halogen. This bulb here is an HID, but if you take a look at these low beams here, ooh, yep, that's still halogen. And oh, what's this fog light here? Yep, that's also halogen. Chevy, you need to update your truck. It's kind of time to update it. Cheap halogens, that's not acceptable anymore. Not to mention, there's a reason why we switched to LEDs. It's because they're much brighter, therefore it makes it so much easier for the driver to see ahead. And yet, this is the lighting technology you have? And guess what? It's the exact same case back here. Still halogen bulbs, and that's the only way you can get Colorado. A lot of GM's products have moved on to LEDs, even in the taillights. I usually don't reserve too much complaints about this, but come on. The point of lights is to see. These need to be seen. We have much better technologies that allow us to see lights easier. And yet this is what we still got on the Colorado. Come on, Chevy, update it. Halogens are a thing of the past now. Time to switch to LEDs. Okay, off of the lighting topic now, because we get it. I hate halogen bulbs. I much prefer LEDs. Let's talk about more of the actual truck itself. So while we're back here, before we move up front, I want to talk about a few things that GM does, and the Colorado has all of these things that I just love it. Right here, this side step. I love this. all truck makers should put this side step in their bumpers. Why? Sometimes the tailgate happens to be down and you need to get up in there, but ooh, notice that's not very comfortable for me to get up in here with my legs swung around like this. So what GM has done is they put this little side step that's low enough so that I can easily grab it, and using a tie down point up here, whoop-de-doo. Well, would you look at that? I'm in the bed of the truck. Other things with the tailgate that I love, well, look at that. It's a soft open tailgate. No loud clunk every time you actually open the thing. It softly opens just like that. Now, as you can see here, this truck actually came with the tonneau cover. This is an option that you can get. A lot of truck makers have been switching their tailgate materials to be much lighter. This is way lighter than the tailgate of my dad's truck back when it still had a tailgate. Now it's a flatbed because the box rotted out. I used to have to use 2 hands to lift that tailgate because that thing was actually so heavy and it barely latched. Watch how easy this is to close. I did that one-handed. There is one problem with the design of the back here, and it actually has something to do, not necessarily with the tailgate, but it's actually the backup camera. Now, if you didn't know this, there was a bill passed where basically in 2018, I think it was, every single new vehicle sold in North America has to have a backup camera on it. No questions asked. If it does not have a backup camera, then you cannot sell the car. So because of that, GM obviously had to comply, and they had to put the backup camera somewhere, except this is not the best spot for it. As you can see, this little spot right here is where the backup camera is. Now, when the tailgate's closed, it's just fine. In fact, actually, the backup camera works very well, except when the tailgate's down. Then all you get is a nice shot of your license plate. How convenient. I know, it's a bit of a challenge in trying to figure out where the backup camera should go, but the tailgate is not a good option because it's instantly useless the second the tailgate is not closed. Could use a little work on the placement for that. Alright, it's time to move on to the inside of the truck, where this really starts to actually show its age and starts to explain why GM really needs to update the Colorado. And not just the Colorado, but also their brother, the Canyon. So with that, I'm going to talk about some things in here that are great and things that are not so great. First thing we're going to talk about, and this is actually a complaint I noticed right off the bat. Now, in case you didn't know this, especially considering that I run a YouTube channel talking about gadgets per se, I'm a bit of a technology type of guy. And despite that, when this came out, it was actually pretty good for technology at the time. And it's not terrible for today's standards, but let's just say it's kind of behind in many others. Before we can talk about the good things of it, I do have to bring up some of the bad things. So let's talk about the actual infotainment system first. Sore point here is it's an 8-inch display. Now, okay, in this type of size of vehicle, it's kind of hard to integrate a bigger screen and such, but automakers have been figuring out how to integrate bigger screens. And in case you didn't know me, I'm a big screen kind of guy, and I have to admit, 8 inches, that's kind of small for today's standards. So you know what? Kind of want a bigger screen. But in terms of the rest of that, actually the screen, fairly nice. It's very responsive. It's very touch responsive. They've been doing a good job updating the hardware for that. And despite that, this truck originally came out in 2015. That was when they redesigned it. This definitely does not have the software from then. They've been updating the infotainment system over time, and it's great. It used to ship with MyLink 2.0, but this truck has Chevy's new Infotainment 3 system. GM actually now has a new Android Automotive based system, but that's actually extremely new and is like just starting to roll out in their brand new products. So I didn't expect it in here, but you know what? I have to say, for a software kind of guy like I am, Infotainment 3 is actually amazing. It is great, it's easy to use, and if the software is easy to use, that means you're not taking your eyes off the road for long periods of time, and that's great. Infotainment 3 is easy to use, and it also supports Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, something that I heavily care about. It is not wireless, however, which kind of sucks, and actually GM has been shifting a lot of their cars to now start, even Chevy products are starting to get this too. They're starting to get wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. This has not made the cut just yet, so yep, we still have to use wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But speaking of wiring our phones to the car so we can use that, actually here comes another complaint that I have. It's actually the ports that they're choosing to use in here. Now, I'll compliment them on this. Every single time they redesign their cars, they add a Type-C port. I am a huge Type-C advocate, if you hadn't watched my gadgets channel, and they've actually been adding Type-C ports in their cars. It's usually about a 50-50 split between Type A and Type C, but that is good. It's good to have both options at this time because right now we're in a transitional period where we're all switching our cables from Type A's to Type C's. We haven't switched fully to Type C yet, so include both. Great, except this car doesn't have Type C. I've searched the center console here. I've searched right up here where there's some USB ports, and even in the back, there's charging ports in the back. More on that later. Not a single Type C. They're all Type A's. Sucks. Another thing that we have to note is, and I'm surprised that they actually were quick to put this in when they redesigned the Colorado, a wireless charging pad. This thing has a wireless charging pad, but it was not designed very well to accommodate future smartphones. And this is a big sore spot because this is actually a brand new truck. This was made in 2022. This is a 2022 Colorado. However, this thing was designed in 2015, 2016, around that time. And let's just say our phones were very different from the way that they currently are now. They used to be a lot smaller, but boy, have our phones grown. So to conclude a little test that I have here, I have a Samsung Galaxy S7, which was the latest phone at the time when this truck was designed. If I put it here, oh look, it fits perfectly. But here's something that worries me even more. This is the Galaxy S7, not the 7 Plus. So because of that, this is the smaller phone. And actually, I'm putting it right here. It barely fits on that charger. And that's a small one. Now here's a phone that actually released in 2021, but is actually the phone that I still use today. This is my iPhone 13 Pro Max. Obviously, this is not a small phone. And when I try to put this here, oh look, it doesn't even want to go in the cavity cutout where the wireless charger is. So I can't fit this, therefore I can't wirelessly charge my iPhone because it doesn't fit. And if you think that this is a problem for iPhone users, no, this is even a problem for Android users. In fact, actually, a lot of Android phones are actually more taller than this phone. So because of that, they are not going to fit any better than this will. And this isn't even case. So it's great. This thing has some great technologies, great software. I absolutely love it. I'm actually kind of disappointed that they decided to switch to an Android automotive based system because seriously, Gina, you didn't really need to. Your actual software was great. So despite that, yeah, it sort of works in today's modern world, but you can definitely see its age. It's time for GM to actually update the whole truck. The Colorado's screaming, update me. I have old technology. It just screams it everywhere. All right, but that's enough of my rant in terms of technology. Let's actually talk about a few more comfort features because, yeah, I'm not on the Gadgets channel. This is the Drive channel. I need to give this channel more love, to be honest. Seriously, I really do. So let's talk about the actual rest of the car and the bits that actually make the car a car and not talk about the technology. First of all, climate controls. It's a little slow from what I've experienced, but then again, the country's in like a bit of a deep freeze at the moment. So yeah, it's cold. My fingers are actually extremely cold right now. I have the door open and the truck's not running. But the climate control, despite that it's extremely freezing outside, it doesn't take too long to actually warm up. And what's nice is this truck offers remote start, which to me is a must-have, especially in northern colder climates like, oh yeah, Michigan per se. So what you'll find here is actually a single zone automatic climate system, and it works great. It's easy to use and none of the functions are buried deep within the infotainment system. This is great. This is a problem that a lot of automakers have been causing. Some automakers have been taking it to a very uncomfortable level for a lot of drivers where all of the functions are in the display and you have to go into a separate climate menu. I personally like them present at all times, so that way I don't have to go digging around. So as long as they keep the functions present at all times, it's great. A lot of automakers have been switching to a system where some of the controls are either physical buttons, meaning they're always present, or they're on the display but always present no matter what. But some functions are buried in the infotainment system, meaning you have to open a separate climate menu and then fiddle around with it. That's not what you want to be doing while you're driving. So because GM managed to figure out how to fit all the controls on one single panel here, and none of them are buried in the infotainment system, a little quirk about this truck actually, and this is a quirk about GM's other truck, is we have the piano keys here, as they like to call it. This includes some of your miscellaneous truck functions, because remember, this is a truck, and it'll contain functions like your trailer mode, it'll contain your bed lighting. It also has a few other things like a quick access button to deactivate your parking sensors. You might be wondering, why would you want to deactivate your parking sensors? Well, it doesn't help to have your truck beep at you when you're trying to back a trailer up per se, because, oh yeah, the trailer's right there. That would drive the truck nuts. Therefore, that would drive you nuts. Good thing they have a quick toggle for deactivating the parking sensors. Right below that, we also have heated seats, and oh, I love this. I love how GM does this. They don't do this in all their cars, but when they do it in their cars, oh, I love it. Their method of heated seats is there's two different ways you can heat yourself up. They got a button that will heat both your back and your butt, as well as a button that will heat your back only. This is great. I have these two buttons in my car as well. I love it. I use them both all the time. GM, don't ever get rid of that. I love how you do the heated seats. No ventilated seats in this truck. I don't know if they're an option or not, but no ventilated seats in this truck. Before we move on to other bits of the truck, you have to cover one more miscellaneous function with the truck, and that would be actually this right here. Because this is a truck, quite often you'll be towing things. So because of that, there's actually a physical switch to control trailer brakes, which is very convenient when you're towing. I don't know how much towing this truck will be doing due to I know who owns it, but hey, it's there and it's great. Not complaining at all. Now, this is a truck, and that means in order for it to be a truck, it has to be extremely practical. Come on, we're Americans. We are constantly putting things in our vehicles. So because of that, we have to have plenty of nooks and crannies. And let me just say, I am very shocked at the nooks and crannies that I found in this truck. For one, the door pockets are actually extremely practical. They have two different layers of shelving. Now, they're not going to hold necessarily big stuff, but hey, they can hold small pens and very other things. But it's nice to see that there's two layers of shelving, and they also have their own built-in cup holders. Not every car has a built-in cup holder in the door panel. For example, Red Fox. Center console is also pretty spacious. You got two decently sized cup holders for your drinks, as well as a little slot in between it, so that way if they're like coffee mugs, for example, this is something that a lot of people wonder. Why is there a slot between the two cup holders in some vehicles? It's actually because those slots are designed for mugs. You can stick your mug in there, and the handle will have a place to actually sit, instead of causing the mug to not sit in the cup holder properly. So yeah, that's what that slot's for. Although some people use this slot for a completely different idea. In front of that, you have a little bin that can contain coins, or actually another smartphone if you wanted to. And that's where you'll find a lot of your connections. You'll find a 12-volt outlet, two USB-A's. Why are there no Type-C's in this car yet? And an aux cord for any old MP3 players or whatnot that we basically don't use today anymore. Behind the center console and your shifter, you also have your wireless charging pad that is poorly designed. And in terms of your center console, it's not actually as deep as the full-size trucks, but it's deep enough per se. Like there's a Germix bottle and a tire pressure gauge in here, for example. All fit just fine. Holy crap, there's a blank space. I assume this is where a 12-volt outlet is supposed to go, that or some USB connections, but yeah, there's actually a blank spot in here for a power connection. That's weird. Glove box is obviously pretty spacious. It's where you'll find your owner's manual per se. Nothing special about that. It's not dampened or felt lined, so they definitely cheaped down on that. But hey, it works. And then the last thing about this that a lot of GM trucks have, and some other trucks have as well, if you take a look up here, there's actually a little storage bin up here for things per se. And before we move to the back, however, I got one last thing that I want to rant about. These two keys right here, yes, two of them. There's two separate parts. You have an actual physical key to start the truck. Why have they not updated this yet? Yeah, this truck does not have push button start. It's still, you have to insert the key and twist it, and you have to have a separate remote fob, so that means there's potentially two things to lose. Not good. But hey, truck has remote start. It's great. All right, we're now in the back seat of the Chevy Colorado, and I have to say, this isn't actually as bad as I was thinking. Now, one thing that I do have to warn you is the Colorado has a couple options in terms of the back seat. What do I mean by that? Cab configurations. Yes, this vehicle has different cab configurations, and this is the crew cab. Let's just say, for the size of this vehicle and this cab configuration, it's actually just fine. This is me sitting behind myself, except, well, I'm 5'8". If I'm 5'8" and this is me behind myself, this is kind of tight, and this is the largest cab configuration you can actually get. Yes, you can get smaller cabs than this. This example of the Colorado is a crew cab configuration. You can get an extended cab, and trust me, I've actually seen the back seat of them. They're not spacious at all. They are very cramming. So this is me behind myself, and in this passenger seat here, I backed it all the way far back as it'll go. And again, I'm 5'8". My knees are actually against the back of the seat, and this is all the way back. So because of that, keep in mind, if you're actually planning on frequently putting passengers back here, I strongly advise you to go crew cab. Do not go extended cab unless those back seats are pretty much going to be unused and you plan on using them for storage. But anywho, while we're back here, let's actually talk about a few backseat amenities, because this actually has a fairly decent amount. There's one glaring omission that I would really like that this truck doesn't have, but before we do get into that, let's talk about what this truck does have in the back seat. First up, we have a fold down armrest. Perfect, with two cup holders. Nice. Now what happens if you have three people back here? Say goodbye to your cup holders, except for the cup holders on the door pockets. And then we have our center console here, which actually there's I'm very surprised at what they put back here. They put 3 different charging points in here. There's a 12-volt outlet and 2 USB Type A's. Again, where's my Type C, GM? As well as beneath that, there's supposedly a storage unit thing. I have no clue what exactly you're gonna put there, so okay. And then GM also did their signature cheap out on just use one map pocket because the driver's seat doesn't have one. That sucks. And it is now I'm just noticing that they even cheaped out on the interior here and put halogen bulbs instead of LEDs. Why? But let's say that you don't exactly want to use this truck for hauling passengers and you actually want to put stuff in the back seat like different objects. Well, there's a few options to do that. First, option 1, you can fold it down like that and we'll move the front seat forward a little bit so that way this will go down. Oh wait, hold on. Oh, that folds down just like that. Boom! Seat folds down like that. And actually there's a little room back here if you want to store some very flat objects. Or option 2, you flip this lever here up and then voila! Under seat storage. And actually, I'm looking back here, it's rather spacious. Yeah, that's a good thing, I suppose. And to flip it back down, just like that. All right, enough of the tour because we basically toured every single spot of this where I can give you things that actually are meaningful. Now let's do a couple tests that I like to call the where did they cheap out tests, because there's a few areas where they can potentially cheap out and it drives me nuts when they do it. First of all, yeah, they cheaped out in terms of the push button start. I've already mentioned that. So let's turn the truck on and test that for one thing. We're going to do a Windows test because this is an area where a lot of automakers can cheap out. How do they do it? Automatic windows. Do they all go down at the touch of a button or do they not? So let's figure out where they cheaped out. That, and I'm also cold, so let's get the heat on. All right, the car is running. It's actually warmed up now and we're probably about to cool it down with what we're about to do here. So, all right, Windows test. Driver's side window. Does it go automatically down? Yes, it does. How about auto up? It does go auto up. Passenger window. Does go automatically down. How about auto up? Uh-oh. We're not automatically going up. They cheaped out there. Okay, so what about the rear windows? Okay, those are auto down and probably like the passenger. Yep, those are not auto up. So driver's window is fully automatic. The rest are only auto down. Common area where they cheap out. I know, it's annoying. Let's also review a quick general material quality. Now this is a Chevy product, so it won't be too mean. This is actually where the materials are not supposed to be super nice. So let's get an idea for the plastics and the build quality in here. Okay, we got, nope, actually that's in line, sorry. Nice quality knobs, actually. That's really great. Backup camera quality. Quality is pretty grainy if I'm being honest. Okay, but that's nice. They do give you a trailer line, so that way if you're trying to hitch a trailer, there's a trailer line and it allows you to hitch that trailer much easier. Oh wait, let's find out how many gears this has. So for that test, you always put it in low, and because this is an automatic, we have to do a quick test. 8 gears. Yeah, overall build quality, actually, despite that this is a Chevy product and the material choice isn't always the nicest, this is very solidly built. Oh, heated steering wheel, this has one, yes. So in terms of actual build quality, they didn't cost cut there. They did cost cut on the windows, unfortunately. The last thing we're going to check out is actually the sound system. I'd like to see the quality of that.
I feel it.
Yeah, that's actually really good. And the last thing to check, yeah, this does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's not wireless, unfortunately. The last thing we're gonna check, do we have navigation? From the looks of it, let me see, we have, yeah, Wi-Fi hotspot. There's typically a navigation icon there. So we definitely cheaped out on the navigation aspects from the looks of it. Wait, hold on, what's this apps? No way, this has an app store? I didn't know that. Oh look, nav icon right there. Let's see what this is. Oh yeah, this is OnStar Nav. So you might be thinking, I just talked about, this thing has all the buttons on here, and it actually does, except GM likes to have a redundant menu on the screen if that's how you want to do it for some odd reason. So you can control your fan speed right there, temperatures in all your zones and such like that. But all of these buttons you see here are all in this panel right here. So it's all just redundancy. That, and hey, if a button breaks, there's a redundant way to turn it back on. So that's great. You know what? Let's actually dive into this infotainment system. And despite that GM has discontinued this, they are in the process of switching to Android Automotive. This is Chevy's Infotainment 3 system, and it just works so well. You have audio with your radio and various other things. You got your source list here. Obviously, I got my iPhone plugged in, so it's going to play whatever's on my iPhone and such. There's other sources here like Sirius XM, and you've got a whole list of all of your sources together. And so from the looks of it, there's AM, FM, Sirius XM, Bluetooth, in this case USB, which is how my phone's plugged in because I'm plugged in using Apple CarPlay. In terms of the phone, I can't visit that because that's not my phone connected. That's actually my grandpa's phone with all of his contacts, so we are not going to visit that menu. But of course, it's basically like the phone app on your smartphone with your list of contacts, the dial pad, all that basic stuff. Wi-Fi hotspot. Chevy offers a Wi-Fi hotspot for a period of time. It expires either 3 months or a year. I do not remember how long that duration is, so whatever I say, do not quote me on that. Do that research yourself. Users, there's different driver profiles that you can have on this thing. So if you have different drivers who are driving the car, you can tune the whole system as well as car settings to gear it more towards the driver. And in terms of your settings, you can change language, date and time, Wi-Fi networks, the phones you have connected, and various other things. Also, it has your ability to toggle your apps like Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and a few other settings like rear seat reminder. One of my favorite things in here is teen driver. It's if you have a teen that borrows your car, but you obviously don't trust them enough, you can actually get them a special key that's triggered by the key fob. So when they get in the car, it will detect, okay, the teen is in the car, so we're going to limit a few things. And it'll limit like top speed. It'll also log all of this stuff. So if your teen decides to floor it, give it a couple reds saying, hey, I got a tough truck, just listen to it, for example. Oh, their parents will know about it for sure. And obviously there will be a pin that you can set in it so that you can disable it, as well as valet mode, which will lock some things like, for example, the glove box. Evidently, this also has an app store. I have no idea exactly how it works. Connection failure, yeah, so okay. We have other things like camera. So this will allow you to monitor your backup camera, and I have to admit the camera quality itself is surprisingly bad. GM's actually updated a lot of their cars to have stupendous resolution, but this is grainy. This is not great. And various other services like Spotify, Amazon Alexa, and also a little homepage here for, well, I don't know why, because actually this is a better home screen. And obviously to launch Apple CarPlay, you can tap that icon right there and launch into your iPhone and such. And if you have an Android phone, which I do actually, let me see if it'll connect this time. It does have Android Auto, and I've actually seen it work. My grandpa uses an Android phone, for example. In fact, that's what the video we'll be doing later on is going to be about. And at this point, I basically run out of things to talk about in terms of the tour of this car. Alright everyone, so I had no idea if I was going to be able to drive this or not, but my grandpa is here in the car, and you probably can't see him because I don't have a wide enough angle on my camera, but that's what we're gonna have to deal with. So I'm going to start off with some initial driving impressions here. Just going down Wisconsin roads. Just gotta find the perfect place to maybe turn and do a little acceleration test. I'm not gonna floor it or anything, but just get an idea of what this does. But in the meantime, while waiting for that, I'll say this does ride pretty nice actually. Hey Grandpa, since you're in here, would you mind telling us why you bought the truck?
Our old vehicle's getting a little old, and not as dependable on the longer trips.
Oh, brakes feel nice. There goes the camera. This thing has enough power, it gets up and goes. I'll just say that much. Yeah, this is why I need a completely different camera mount. It's so that way the camera doesn't flop over like it always does. There's one thing that I do have to say though in terms of driving this truck though, the size. I know that trucks year over year, redesign after redesign, they just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's intentional at this point. And I don't like it. I hate driving big vehicles.
This is a small truck.
I know. And this actually feels about the size of my dad's truck, which is like 20 years old per se, which goes to say that trucks just keep getting bigger and bigger, because this is a mid-size, and back in 2002 my dad's truck was considered full size.
It does feel like a big truck.
yeah, easily. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I don't think small trucks or mid-sized trucks get enough appreciation.
Well, it all depends on what you're going to use it for.
So what do you plan on using this for then?
Most of the truck.
Kind of wish we were doing this test back at my place, because something I like to do is get a feel for how it steers and handles and such, but all these roads are just straight. Because there's that one back road, I think it's Coles Creek. The second you start going down that hill, it's just twists and turns. Is this a, yeah, if I recall, this is four-wheel drive, right?
Yeah, it should be an automatic right now. So what do you think about the suspension?
It's because it's a new vehicle, I expect it to be pretty good, and it is pretty good. And due to how I'm sure you'll drive it, I'm pretty sure it'll age much better than other suspensions and trucks that I've ridden in. I will definitely say one thing, compared to my car, oh, it's way better. That's because my car, Red Fox, pretty much has zero rear suspension at all. It's just shot. And there's a bump there. That was comfortable. Yeah, I gotta say, if I ever need to get a truck, I am not going full size. Because I was already thinking, okay, this probably should feel a little smaller than the other trucks I've driven, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
It does feel like a full-size truck.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it felt smaller as I was sitting in the passenger seat. Oh yeah, GM really improved the brakes ever since 2002. I hate the brakes in my dad's truck and my mom's Yukon. They are so spongy. Worst brakes I have ever used. You know that feeling that I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
These have a little sponge to it, but not anywhere near what those older vehicles have. I have to say, it's hard to actually give specific details on the driving dynamics because I'm not at my roads back at home. Let's just say this is pretty good for a mid-sized truck. If I recall, I think this is the most popular mid-sized truck on the market. It's either that or the Toyota Tacoma. I know they sell a crap ton of those. I just wish they'd update this thing. It's been at least 6 years since it's been designed. And yet no Type-C's. A wireless charger, can't charge modern day phones. Like not only can it not charge my iPhone, it can't charge your phone. Yeah, aside from its age, this is a nice vehicle to drive. Do you think it was worth the price you paid for it?
Well, I think they're all too expensive, but yeah, I think I've been happy with it.
So what's your favorite thing about the truck?
I think the way it handles is real nice.
Yeah, this is way easier to steer than a full size. I know I keep joking at you about how you were $1,000 away from buying a Tesla. So I guess if I ask for your favorite thing of this, I guess I better figure out my favorite thing for this. And pretty much the only thing I can think of is just the size. Despite that it feels bigger than when I was sitting in the passenger seat, I would much rather take this over full size. And yeah, I don't think smaller trucks get the appreciation they deserve. It's one of the reasons why if I were to get a truck, it would be not necessarily this, but a Rivian R1T. Despite that, yeah, they're about $100,000. Though actually, the one I spec'd cost like $15,000 cheaper. Overall, nice truck. I like it. It's no Tesla, but I like it.
One thing it could use is keyless starting.
Oh, that too, yeah.
That would be nice. I think you gotta get the top of the line for the power seat on the passenger side.
Yeah, GM really cheaps out in a few areas. That drives me nuts. Like, I do what I call I'm starting to do what I call the window tests in all of my videos, where I basically test which windows roll down with one push of a button versus do you have to hold it. I found that all the windows you can just push the button and they all go down, but only the drivers you can pull it and it, yeah. The rest you have to hold it.
Right, so you can feature.
Not really.
Well, you don't catch other passengers' hands.
They have a button to stop that. Yeah, I guess that's how I'm going to conclude this review. So let's head back to the house, film another video that we have to make. And after I finish editing the big portion of this, I'll put it on the cardboard. Starting under the hood, in terms of power that the engine produces, it produces enough power to get it a 6 out of 10. Transmission, it has a total of 8 gears, and it's actually smooth enough to the point where it deserves its full 8 out of 10. Drivetrain, while this is a 4-wheel drive example that we have here today, a lot of Colorados are also offered in a 2-wheel drive. Because of that, it's not going to get its 10 out of 10. Instead, it's going to get an 8 out of 10. 0 to 60 happens in 6 seconds, so because of that, it gets a 7 out of 10. And fuel economy, it's not necessarily great compared to other vehicles, but it's not terrible either, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Oh, and yeah, when I do the math calculations, it also scores a 5 out of 10 as well, which brings the total under the hood score to a 34 out of 50. Next up, we have the weekend categories, and FYI, this is a subjective category, so these are all of my opinions, so take this for what you will. Styling, it gets a 6 out of 10. This does have the midnight package, and I actually really love the design of this truck compared to other mid-sizers, so yeah, it deserves a 6 out of 10 in my opinion. Visibility, while it's great in some areas, it's not so great in others if I'm being honest, so because of that, I'm giving it an average 5 out of 10. Handling, it's a truck, so they're not necessarily the best in terms of handling vehicles, but it's good enough to the point where I'll award it a 3 out of 10. Fun factor, it's not really a fun vehicle to drive if I'm being honest, so I'm just giving it a 2 out of 10. Same with cool factor, and that's because not a lot of people think that mid-size pickups are really cool. Mid-size pickups don't sell as well as full-size, so because of that, that drops the cool factor score down, but I have a big appreciation for it, so because of that, I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. Bringing the weekend categories to a total of 18 out of 50. Finally, we have the daily categories, and this brings us to features, which, okay, this is a well-equipped example of the Colorado, except there's a lot of things about it that are just questionable. No wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and a wireless phone charger that doesn't even charge the phones that we use today. Yeah, gotta give it a 5 out of 10. Comfort is actually very strong in this, and it gets a 6 out of 10. Quality is great. While the material choices is not exactly the best, everything is solidly put together so well, I gotta give it a 5 out of 10. Practicality, it's a pickup truck. Of course, it's gonna be extremely practical, so I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. I'm docking it a bit because, well, there's some things in it that aren't exactly that practical, and it's also a smaller truck, so yeah, 9 out of 10. And finally, value. This is a $40,000 truck that we have sitting right here. It's actually costing closer to around $45,000 per se. So yeah, this truck is a lot of money. However, I wouldn't really want to pay this much money for a truck that is this old in terms of design. This came out in around 2016, 2015, sometime in there. And this thing just shows its age in a lot of areas. So because of that, I can't really justify $40,000 for this. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10 on this one, bringing us to a total of 29 out of 50 for the daily categories. With that, we get a grand total of 81 out of 150. And for my first pickup truck that I've ever reviewed for the channel, I think that's a fairly decent score. It does fairly well without anything to compare it to. I guess I'm going to end this video with this last note here. Mid-size pickup trucks are unappreciated, and even Chevy proves it. They haven't updated their truck for a while. So with that said, Chevy, you need to update your truck. This is pretty old. All right, thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with the stuff below. My name is Alpha DeWolf, Random Alpha, signing out.
Oh, Grandpa, why do you have the weirdest driving position ever? And your legs are short! How are you this far back?
I'm trying to find intersections. I am not doing a good job. Oh yeah, right there. Okay, I need to look at the navigation a little more to tell her when an intersection's coming up. If you ask me, a truck is supposed to be dirty. If your truck's not dirty, then you're not using it right. So that's why I think of it. Z71 off-road, it's supposed to be able to handle this stuff just fine.
It can, but that doesn't mean it will.
Is that it? No, that's not an intersection. That's not an intersection. Oh, right there. There it is.
There's another road right there.
Next one? Okay. You know the roads here better than I do. So this road up here. Okay. Wow, that's... You almost missed that one. Alright, let's do a gentle turn this time. Okay. There we go, that's more of my gentle turns.